So this is the stamp set included in the September 2020 card kit from Simon. In the kit you also have a coordinating die, and that outline die does fit the Sending Smiles on the bottom of the stamp set. But today I'm going to be showing you some card ideas that use just the Just Miss You stamp set. Starting out with some white cardstock, and I've taken the cloud edge image from the stamp set and I'm having it positioned sort of in the corner of this cardstock. This is an A2 sized card, so it's 5.5 inches wide by 4 1/4 tall. And I'm stamping all of the black lines today in VersaFine ONYX black ink. So I'll stamp that down in that corner. Then I'm going to use that same exact stamp and reposition it off to the side and stamp it once again. This is going to give me a continuous line of clouds going across the very bottom of this card. So in the stamp set, there are these cute little guys kind of hanging from strings, and you can put the little heart-shaped balloon on top. So I used them together to sort of figure out exactly where I wanted to stamp the little man, the little person first, and then I came in and stamped the heart right above it. And I tried to make sure that like the movement line of that string goes right up through the center of the heart so that it looks more natural to have the person hanging from the string. So after I had that, I stamped my greeting, which says, "Sending happy thoughts." I'm also trying to be really careful as I stamp all this using my MISTI stamp positioning tool to not press too hard. These are very thin lined images, and I wanted to make sure that I kept the integrity of the line. I stamped the cloud shape from the stamp set, and then I repeated that cloud over on the opposite edge of the card design. So now I'm going to break out my colored pencils, and I'm only going to be coloring the heart on this card. And I did this for a few reasons. The first reason is I wanted to create kind of like a focal point for the card, just one area that has color to give it focus. And I also really liked the dramatic effect of only having one colored area. So I did shades of pink and into a dark red. I brought in some white in the center, and eventually I took some purple around the outer edge just to give it even more shading. I also grabbed sort of a red-violet color and went over that area again because it was looking a little bit flat, and I wanted that red shade to really stand out a little bit more. So as I brought in this red shade, it really sort of made it look more saturated, and I love how that shading turned out. So this card is really simple. Like I said, I only wanted to color that one area, and the other reason why I didn't color anything else was because once I colored that one heart, it took a long time, and I decided I wanted it just like this, and I didn't want any more coloring. So that is my first card using the stamp set from the September 2020 card kit. Now I'm going to make another card, and this time I'm going to be watercoloring. So I'm using some watercolor paper from Fabriano. This is the Artistico Extra White. And I'm starting out by stamping the same cloud shape in that bottom corner once again. My idea for this card was to have the two people hanging on strings next to each other with the hearts, the very top of the strings, and have the hearts intersecting a little bit. Now, I tried stamping this once before, just kind of eyeballing it, and I couldn't get the positioning just right. So in order to help with that, I decided to stamp the images on some Post-it notes, cut them out really roughly so that I could place them on my watercolor paper and get the positioning just perfect. After I have them in the spot where I want them, I can place the stamp right over the top, just long enough to swing the door of my MISTI over, pick up that image, and then I can remove my temporary stamped images and then go ahead and stamp the actual project. So this is just a way to make sure you get your positioning just right. You could also do an entire card map where you stamp out the entire card on some scratch paper and use that as your guide as you start stamping. But I didn't think to do that until I'd already stamped the bottom of my card with that cloud edge. So I decided to go ahead and just make the images, little separate pieces and cut them out. So I love that I did this because my second stamping of this card worked perfectly. The first one had the heart balloons and kind of weird areas, and this got them exactly where I wanted them. I stamped the "I really miss you" greeting twice, just to make sure I get a really dark, solid greeting there. And then I stamped the cloud shape up in that top right corner as well. So after all my stamping was finished, I took my watercolor paper and taped it down to a hardboard so I can do some painting. The watercolor set I'm using today is from Paper Fashion and American Crafts, and I'm going to be doing some really simple watercoloring today, nothing too complicated. I'm going to take this blue shade, and I'm starting at the bottom of the card, or the bottom of the watercolor paper, and I'm using the paint very, very concentrated. I want it to be concentrated on this one end of the card, and then I'm going to bring in more water and dilute it as it comes down. I want the center of the card to be have less color and have the most intense blues at the top and bottom. So I'm just adding more and more water, trying to spread this out, and eventually I'll get it all the way kind of fading off into the center of the card. And then I'll go ahead and hit that with my heat tool to make sure that it's completely dry before I turn it back around and paint from the other direction. So once that's dry, I grabbed more of that blue paint and started painting from the top. Now this one's not going to have as much color, just barely at the top, just a little bit more of that color. And then bringing more of that wet paintbrush to pull the color down. So once everything was dry, as far as the blue sky goes, I then came in and painted the hearts. I started the first heart with a bright pink and the second with more of a rose red, and then I added that rose red over the top of the pink heart after it was dry, and then on top of the rose heart I added some purple and just trying to get a little bit of that color difference, and eventually I added some blue, trying to get that dark purple going. I didn't like how flat the balloons looked, especially after that very dimensional one I did with the colored pencil before. So I decided to add some details with a white gel pen. This is a Jelly Roll pen, just some dots and stripes. And then I trimmed down my watercolor piece, put some foam tape on the back, and adhered it to my card front. And that finishes my second card for the day. So both of these cards are really, really simple, essentially one layer cards, even though one does have a little bit of foam tape. And I enjoy how this turned out. You can pick up this stamp set in the September 2020 card kit or on its own over at simonstastamp.com. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in another video very soon.